Bodily harm, betrayal, braggadocio. Would it even be an Iron Man movie without a few particulars?
From the ashes of captivity, never has a greater Phoenix metaphor been personified in human history.
Anyone even vaguely familiar with Tony Stark knows the character suffers from a massive superiority complex. Tony is a world-changing genius, and he is highly aware of that fact. This leads Tony to believe that he knows better than anyone else, to the frustration of his allies and the advantage of his enemies. That's why a major plot point in each Iron Man movie is Tony learning humility the hard way. Tony begins the first film as an arrogant and selfish weapons manufacturer. It's only after he is captured by terrorists that he sees the destruction caused by his weapons and vows to stop making them. In the second movie, Tony has trouble finding a solution to his deadly illness. Tony undergoes a reality check, realizing that even his great intelligence is not enough to rescue him from his condition. Instead, he has to rely on his father's help from beyond the grave to find a solution. In Iron Man 3, Tony's trademark arrogance crumbles when a mysterious terrorist called the Mandarin attacks him in his own home in broad daylight. Tony is forced to concede he cannot handle this new threat alone and needs the help of his friends to defeat the villain, all while keeping a grip on his PTSD. Female love interests in the MCU too often get the short end of the stick, but Tony's longtime love interest, Pepper Potts, bucks this trend by being an important part of the Iron Man films. Pepper starts out as Tony's assistant, and the closest thing to a companion he has in his jet-setting playboy life. Throughout the movie, Pepper supports Tony, even saving his life at one point. In the second film, Tony and Pepper are officially a couple. Dealing with his personal illness, Tony makes Pepper the head of Stark Industries, and she takes over the entire organization on Tony's behalf. But it's in Iron Man 3 when Tony needs Pepper the most. Struggling to control his PTSD following the Battle of New York, Tony leans hard on Pepper to keep him going through his insomnia and night terrors. In the end, Pepper once again personally saves Tony's life when she also briefly gains superpowers and helps Tony defeat Aldrich Killian. When Iron Man premiered back in 2008, one major reason why Tony Stark felt like a breath of fresh air is that his characterization was so different from the popular superhero archetypes of the day. Heroes like Spider-Man and Batman had tortured inner lives with an unhealthy amount of angst. Tony is refreshingly free of such a mentality and does not usually suffer from a great deal of self-doubt. In fact, Tony is so convinced of his own personal greatness that he routinely makes a point of it. No moment exemplifies this better than the end of the first Iron Man film.
I am Iron Man.
In the next film, Tony frames his ownership of the Iron Man suit as a win for America, informing a court convened against him,
I have successfully privatized world peace. What more do you want?
Tony Stark is many things. He's a playboy, a billionaire, a philanthropist, and a superhero. But before all of that, Tony is, at his core, an engineer and an inventor. The entire Iron Man saga begins because Tony is captured by terrorists, and the only way to escape is to create a suit of armor that could get him out of the situation. The first Iron Man suit was built in a cave from spare parts, and it's a very rough affair, big, bulky, and not very fuel efficient. After returning home, Tony gets to work creating a better designed version of the suit, which eventually becomes the iconic red and gold armor we all fell in love with. With each new movie after that, including the Avengers flicks, Tony debuts new versions of the classic Iron Man suit. There's the emergency suit hidden in a briefcase from Iron Man 2, there's the army of autonomous suits from Iron Man 3, there's the Hulkbuster armor from Avengers Age of Ultron and Infinity War, and finally, the nanotech suit that Tony wears in his battle against Thanos and his army. The Iron Man films are considered the starting point for the MCU, not just because they were the first movies in the franchise to receive critical acclaim and box office success, but also because many of the plot points from the Iron Man movies became a staple of the MCU as a whole. For instance, Tony's quippy nature has come to be shared by many other heroes, as has the villain has the same power set as the hero thing, started by Obadiah Stane. The villain also tends to be someone whom the hero has scorned in the past. In Iron Man, Tony is so busy working on dismantling his past as a weapons manufacturer that he doesn't realize that his actions are negatively affecting his company's second-in-command. This leads to the number 2 stepping up his efforts to usurp Tony from the company, attempting to kill Tony in the process. In Iron Man 2, Justin Hammer was a weapons manufacturer who had spent a lifetime being bested by Tony in their field of work, a rival looking for an opportunity to one-up Tony by stealing and improving upon his Iron Man armor design. To this end, he recruits Ivan Vanko, aka Whiplash, whose family was previously crossed by Starks. Finally, in Iron Man 3, Aldrich Killian was a researcher whom Tony had once dismissed and embarrassed. As a result, Killian builds his own company and dreams of the day he can finally defeat Tony Stark. If Pepper Potts is the voice of reason in Tony Stark's life, and Jarvis is the blindly faithful ally who will do anything he asks, James Rhodey Rhodes is the happy medium in Tony's inner circle. Rhodey was Tony's friend long before he became Iron Man, and he feels a personal obligation to look out for his reckless comrade, even if it means breaking the rules or angering Tony himself.
I'm only gonna say this once. Get out.
As a high-ranking member of the United States Air Force, Rhodey is often torn between his duty and his friendship with Tony. In the first Iron Man, Rhodey is forced to hide the fact that it is Tony inside the Iron Man armor getting into an impromptu dogfight against a couple of F-22 Raptors. In Iron Man 2, irked by Tony's increasingly unstable behavior, Rhodey is forced to go against his wishes and confiscate a prototype of the Iron Man armor, turning it over to the US Air Force behind his back. Then in Iron Man 3, Rhodey has become a new superhero named Iron Patriot. Once again, Rhodey is forced to work outside the law when his suit gets controlled by the villain to assassinate the president as ordered by Aldrich Killian. This time, Rhodey and Tony both work in secret to bring down the villain's plan. The world of comic books is roughly divided into 2. Some heroes believe in working within the law, others believe in working outside of it. But in the case of Tony Stark, you have a little bit of both. While Tony's chief priority is making the world a better, safer place, he has no interest in doing so by working alongside the government, at least in the Iron Man films. In the first movie, Tony abruptly shuts down his weapons manufacturing company that had been supplying the government with military arms for decades. He also tries to keep his identity as Iron Man a secret before once again abruptly letting the cat out of the bag. Then, Iron Man 2 deals with the fallout of Tony's dramatic declaration as the government tries to force him to share the tech behind his armor. Finally, in Iron Man 3, an inside job to assassinate the president forces Tony and Rhodey to fly under the radar for the greater good. Ironically, Tony works with the government much better in the Avengers movies, joining S.H.I.E.L.D. despite his suspicions of their motives. After causing the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, Tony signs the Sokovia Accords as a means of atoning for his actions. When Tony Stark was being cast, the studio was resistant to the idea of Robert Downey Jr. playing the role. Director Jon Favreau fought to cast Downey since he felt that the actor's very public struggles with his personal demons would translate very well to Tony Stark, a character who has historically struggled with demons of his own. And so each Iron Man movie has an important side plot, wherein Tony must learn to confront his mistakes. In the first movie, Tony finds out the hard way that the weapons his company manufacture often wind up in the hands of terrorists. This prompts him to become Iron Man and end the destruction his company had indirectly caused. In the second movie, Tony's habit of not playing well with others comes back to bite him when his incompetent rival works with the US government to create new versions of the Iron Man armor. Finally, in Iron Man 3, Tony's refusal to get help for his PTSD and his distancing himself from those seeking to help him lead to severe and debilitating breakdowns. Tony also gets his butt handed to him by the villain when he tries to deal with the Mandarin on his own. In the end, Tony only manages to win after working with Rhodey and Pepper to bring down Aldrich Killian. On his own, Tony Stark can be a pretty impossible character to root for. A self-described genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, Tony combines extreme intelligence with extreme arrogance and snark. He can be hard for general audiences to like, let alone actively support, especially if we don't get to see Tony in a vulnerable position from time to time.
Bit odd. If this was your last birthday party you're ever going to have, how would you celebrate it?
To offset his many advantages in life, every Iron Man movie has a major plot point about Tony struggling with a life-threatening condition. In the first movie, Tony gets severely injured in an explosion, and the only way to keep him alive is through a miniaturized arc reactor that he invents and places in his chest. In Iron Man 2, it is revealed that the arc reactor has started to poison his entire body. Once again, Tony races against time to find a cure for his condition before the poison can shut down his body. In the final film, Tony suffers from PTSD, which leaves him a quivering mess and leads him to make mistakes that almost get him killed. In this way, each Iron Man movie combines Tony's external struggle against a physical villain with an internal struggle against his mortality. While Tony Stark is a very smart man, something he will personally tell you if you let him, his intelligence does not always translate to a complete awareness of his surroundings. This leads to a recurring problem, where Tony does not realize there is a mole in his trusted circle, working against his interests. In the first Iron Man, the mole is Obadiah Stane, who is secretly working to steal Tony's inventions and eventually kill him off. In the second movie, S.H.I.E.L.D. sends Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, undercover inside Tony's company to assess his personality, as a prelude to asking Tony to join the Avengers Initiative. In Iron Man 3, Tony has to deal with Maya Hansen, a former love interest who comes back into his life with details about a radical new medical procedure called Extremis. Unbeknownst to Tony, Maya is secretly working with Aldrich Killian to turn Extremis into a weapon. While Maya comes to regret her association with Killian and tries to help Tony escape, her actions lead to a great deal of harm being inflicted upon the world. Superhero movies generally tend to keep the villains in the same country as the hero. Guys like Batman and Superman fight Americans, or they fight aliens. But the Iron Man trilogy specifically deals with foreign terrorists, reflecting on Tony Stark's past as a weapons manufacturer. In the first movie, Tony is captured by a terrorist group in war-torn Afghanistan. The group makes a return later in the movie when they are shown to be working alongside Obadiah Stane. In the second movie, we get Russian criminal and international terrorist Ivan Vanko, aka Whiplash, who nurses a personal grudge against Tony. Vanko builds his own robot terrorist army after hijacking the knockoff Iron Man suits built by Justin Hammer. Then in Iron Man 3, Tony has to deal with his greatest enemy from the comics, the Mandarin. The film's version of the character is depicted as the head of a massive international criminal organization called the Ten Rings, who have no problem carrying out attacks on American soil. Tony finds out this terrorist leader version of the Mandarin was just an actor set up by Killian. This version of the Mandarin was later retconned in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Post-credits scenes have become an expectation for every Marvel movie, but when the original Iron Man debuted, the concept of a post-credits scene was pretty groundbreaking. These punctuative teasers became staples of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, hinting at the next expansion or returning character. Iron Man has probably the most iconic post-credits scene of all time in the MCU. After many months of speculation, fans cheered at the end of Iron Man when Samuel L. Jackson steps out of the shadows as Nick Fury and tells Tony Stark about the Avengers Initiative. Iron Man 2's post-credits scene reveals Thor's hammer sticking out of a crater, signaling the near arrival of the God of Thunder. Iron Man 3 takes a more easygoing approach, with Tony Stark having an impromptu therapy session with Bruce Banner.
You actively napping?
I drifted.
Where did I lose you?
After 3 movies worth of drama, we'd say Tony earned the right to take it easy this time around.